Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
You know, when I talk to people about networking, I talk to all, I've got family. They're not small business people. Certainly people I talk to in AmSpirit Business Connections get this. But when I talk to people about networking, a lot of times they will just kind of dismiss it as, well, I'm a college professor. Those things aren't for me. Or, I'm just a nurse. I don't really need to worry about networking. And the whole notion that relationships outside of the home don't matter. And they do matter. Relationships are everywhere. And pick an aspect of life, it's there. Sports, it's relationships. You look at some players, they get booted off the teams or get traded because they don't have good relationships. You see people who get coaching jobs. Why? Because they have relationships. So it's everywhere, including not-for-profits. And in the last few months, I had an opportunity to meet and get to know Sabrina Walker Hernandez, and she trains CEOs, board of directors, and employees across a diverse section of not-for-profits, leadership skills, focusing on revenue, relationships, retention. And I've had her on the Charitable Roundtable a couple of times. I talk about the Charitable Roundtable in prior episodes, which it's a monthly gathering of not-for-profits to share ideas, to network. What a concept. And I don't want to say I was blown away by what she had to say, but it was very much a reminder just as how important networking is really anywhere and everywhere. So Sabrina, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me here. I am so excited to be talking about this particular topic because, like you said, I truly, truly believe that the power of networking is the key to any business success, and that includes nonprofit. I will say this at the top, that nonprofit is just a tax designation. It is not a business model. So let's get into it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a perfect lead in because I had a conversation with somebody years ago and they were saying, he was talking about not-for-profits. He said, you should take a look at National Geographic. They're a not-for-profit, but they have their fingers in everything. When I went to law school at Ohio State, I worked in their legal department just as an intern a couple of years. You know what? They were into everything. They had real estate here, doing this and that. All not-for-profit means is that the money is not going to shareholders.
That's correct. That's it. You still have to grow your business model. You still have to network. You still have to get out there and have that plan of growth. And so that is it. And if I could get people to see that I think a light bulb will come on for a lot of people and a lot of organizations who become stagnant over time.
Yeah. And I guess I'll let you elaborate on it, but I get the sense a lot of times with not-for-profits, I have got a very feel-good cause and that's all I need.
Yes. And so before I work with clients or anyone, I went in, let me start by saying this. I went in when I started my business thinking that everybody came from the mindset of, I'm in this nonprofit, but the goal is to grow so that I can have a greater impact. And the goal is to grow this to a multi-million-dollar business so that I can have, again, that multi-million-dollar impact on my client. But what I have found is what you say, a lot of people start their nonprofit from this feel-good place, and they find out that it takes a tremendous amount of work to impact the thousand of lives that they want to impact. And also that makes them scale back. And they say, a lot of times they'll say, no, I am okay with raising $5,000 because I just want to give out this scholarship, or I'm okay raising $5,000 because I'm just going to feed this neighborhood hungry. And so I have to start off with clients that I work with, like, what is your vision for your nonprofit organization? Because I only want to work with the clients who want to have that multi-million-dollar impact.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense for people.
No, it does. It does. Yeah. I assume you run into challenges all the time with people.
I do all the time. It's a couple of things. One is, let's say if you do want to make that multi-million-dollar impact, right? But you just started this nonprofit and you think because you started this nonprofit that people are just going to give you money. That is not the case. You think people are just going to give you money, and you think also that the grants are going to fall from the sky because I just got my 501c3. But a nonprofit is just like any other business. You got to have a proof of concept. You got to prove that your model works. So think about this: federal government, a foundation, they're not going to give you $1 million or $250,000 grant and you are new at this. You have to be around for at least, I say, to get grant ready, you need to be around for at least 3 to 5 years, and you have to show proof of concept. And that's shocking for a lot of people. And when I say that, I'm not talking about your retail grants like Walmart or, those other types of grants. I'm talking about federal, state, foundation grants when I say that. But even at Walmart level, you have to go in, and getting back to networking, I had a small startup that was applying for Walmart grants, let's say, and they weren't getting them. And this happened to me too. And I was able to share this with them. They weren't getting them. And what I found, even with the Walmart grants, is you got to get up from your desk. You got to go introduce yourself to the store manager, share a little bit about your nonprofit, because what happens is the application is sent to corporate, but corporate comes back to the store manager and said, hey, do you know of this organization in your community? And are they doing good work? And would you recommend, the store manager ultimately has that ability to vouch for that organization. Because the story is that I was applying for Walmart grants for my organization. We got a lot of Walmarts. Let me just say that, Frank, a lot of Walmarts. They're on every corner here. And they're not just the regular Walmarts, they're the super Walmart.
Wow.
We have probably a good 15 of them just within an hour, 30 minutes of each other. And so, the strategist that I am, I thought, well, I'm going to apply to all of these Walmarts. And I never left my desk. I just applied and I got nothing.
Yeah.
And then once I said, okay.
Well, you got disappointed.
I got disappointed. Exactly. Got nothing, got disappointed. And going back to everything is relationships. Sabrina, you got to get up from your desk. You have to go in. You have to introduce yourself to the store managers. Yep. Tell them about the organization. Ask how can you partner with them. Is there anything you can do to support what they have going on, what their goals are? And once I changed that, got grants from almost all of them. Yeah. So even in the grant game, it's about relationships. It's not just about, oh, this is a very good program and I want to fund this program and it makes such great sense on paper. It is not just about that. You got to know who is running the foundation. If you can, look and see who's on their board, reach out. That's where the networking and the building of the relationships come in that can have a true impact on what your nonprofit raises.
I'm glad you shared that story, because I almost said, yeah, I would imagine at the Walmart level, you can probably get away without having a relationship, but obviously that's not the case.
Not the case. And with the startups that come into my Facebook group, they're often frustrated by that. And I say, yeah, have you reached out to the store manager? Have you went and introduced yourself to them? And it makes a difference because I know, because I had that experience and I had to adjust my thoughts around that.
Yeah. Well, it's very similar to trying to get a job. You have a resume, you put a resume, here, submit the resume here. I don't know how many, if there's hundreds, maybe thousands of resumes going, depending upon the job,
How do you make yourself stand out? You got to talk to somebody, right?
Right. You think the person who's going to be your boss is going through those hundreds of resumes? No, he's delegated it down to somebody to go through. Lord knows what they're thinking, looking for, but if you have some sort of contact with somebody, maybe the hiring person or the boss, or somebody who knows them, and just to be able to say, you know what, I submitted a resume there. I don't know, just to let you know. And then they're more apt to go down to the person who's sifting through. I have this image of somebody on a pile of resumes just going through, and saying, I want you to find the one that, says Sabrina Walker.
Yeah.
And bring me that.
Yeah.
Now that's not a guarantee, but that's,
nope.
all of a sudden.
But now you're not the thousands in that big pile, right? That people are sifting through.
Right. You're one of 5 that are going to get an interview.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And, from there, it's, then you're calling back your relationship and saying, hey, I got an interview. I want to just say thank you for whatever you've done. And this is great. What might I be able to do for you? And it may be nothing, but just the offer is what counts.
Yeah.
And then the person goes in for the interview and I was talking to Susan or Steve, and, their kids play T-ball together or whatever. And then they go back to Susan or Steve and say, what do you know about this guy? I said, he's a good
Pretty
guy.
good guy.
Yeah. It's like, or gal or whatever. Right.
Right.
So as humans, we're somewhat lazy. Right. And we don't want to make a bad decision. So if Steve or Susan say he's a good guy, I'm going with it, you know? And if it's a train wreck, it's like, well, they told me he was a good guy. I don't know,
That's when I go back and say, why did you tell me that? But no, that's a whole nother conversation. But it's no different in the HR world, no different in the nonprofit world, no different in the business world, all of that. It is truly about relationships. I really do feel that is what made the difference in my success. Because a lot of people also in the nonprofit world say they struggle with their board of directors. My board doesn't do anything. I don't even know why I've heard it all, right? But what I have realized, and one of the best tips that I can give people, is establish relationships with your board members, not your board as a collective. Yes, you need to earn the board's respect. You need to do those things as a collective, but you also need to have individual relationships with your board members, and not necessarily all your board members, but definitely with your board chair and your executive committee, and identify some board champions. And it can't be, it can't be this going in and trying to build a relationship as a monolith with the board. You got to drill down to the individual board member.
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing I took away. Well, one of the many things I took away from your talks were that, and you just shared, okay, here's relationships on the front end of getting money. Now you're talking about the board. There's relationships related to how you're interacting with the board, and knowing your board. And that comes down to having a relationship and knowing that this person is not a great asker, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're a really good smoozer, right? They're good at, and knowing what people's roles are, as opposed to
trying to make people fit into a peg that you want them to fit into. Look, everybody is not going to be a fundraiser. Let me rephrase that, because that is an untrue statement. Everybody is not going to ask for money. Everybody is a fundraiser. It's just what part of the fundraising process do they fit into, right? So when you're building the relationship, you can automatically kind of determine that working with them, right? People are going to be like, hey, I don't like asking for money. They're going to tell you, right? So you just need to say, okay, well, in the fundraising process, there's the door opener. That's the people who, lend their credibility and introduce you to different circles, introduce you to their network so that you can network with them and lend their credibility in that networking process. There's the people who are cultivators. They are your natural networkers. They love taking people out to lunch. They love calling people on the phone, inviting them in for events. That's 60% of fundraising. Building the relationship is 60% of fundraising. So if you have board members that love to build that relationship, they're worth their weight in gold. And then you have where 5% of people they don't have a problem with asking for money. They're okay with that. That is great. You very small and far in between. And then you have those people who like to maintain the relationship, the ones who like to do the thank yous, the one who like to make the phone calls. That's all a part of fundraising. So when you are developing those individual relationships with your board members, you can say, okay, here are all the fundraising pieces. Let's find out where your strength lies.
Yeah. Well, let's be a team, right?
And let's be a team. Mhm.
That's how I look at it is, hey, we're going to come together and, I know you are good at asking. I'm good at bringing the person in the door. Whereas if you cut everybody loose and say, okay, and okay, everybody here on the board is responsible for $10,000, right? Or whatever the number is. You have everybody failing for different reasons, right? The person who's the asker is like, I couldn't get in to see anybody, and the person who is good at seeing people, yeah, I was in there, but I
was scared to ask.
I was scared to ask, but where if they team up, then they're winning.
Yeah, they're winning. Yeah. And I say this all the time too. Look, I don't know anything about sports, but I know if I'm in the Super Bowl, the goal is to create a winning team to win, to win that championship. And if I'm on a basketball team, I want to win whatever the NBA championship, the World Cup for soccer. So I do know that much. And if you're doing this and you're in this, then the whole goal again is to win, to be that organization that will service as many people as you possibly can. And you can only do that by creating that winning team. And you can only tap into that winning team by really developing those relationships so that they feel like it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, no, I mean, you don't know much about sports perhaps, but every team different players on different teams have different strengths and different roles. And you put people in those different roles, and it comes back then to knowing what the people are, knowing who your board is. And so we have the front end of getting the initial monies. You have the board, and maybe there's more to it. But the other thing I really took away from your talks is just kind of the tail end, and staying in contact with your donors, certainly your individual donors.
Yes.
And every year I'll get a call from my alma maters. I went to law school. I've got, and it's a student, and it's like, hey, I just want to fill you on what's going on. It's like, no, you don't. You're here to ask for money, right? And I get it. That's what they're about. But it's like, is there something other than just getting on the phone and asking for money?
I will say this, and thank you for bringing that up for all the nonprofits or anybody that's listening. You can lean into stewardship where you do call people and say, hey, I'm just going to update you. I'm not going to ask for money. That really sets you apart because the expectation is when they get you on the phone that you're going to be asking for money. It always makes my heart sing when I just get a card in the mail from a nonprofit updating me or saying thank you with no other ask within that.
Well, and that's not the case here because it's always in the window, right? And it's usually before the fiscal year ends, and maybe you haven't given or not given enough. And it's like, you don't even know me.
Yes. You got to get to know your donors. You got to, the conversation, look, someone told me, and this really stuck with me, that they don't want to feel like an ATM machine. Anytime someone starts to feel like an ATM machine, then you are being transactional as a nonprofit rather than relational. You want to make sure that your donors are in a relationship with your organization. And I will say this, that's where a good CRM system comes in, which is a customer relation management system. It's not just the having it, the CRM, but it's also putting the data into, or the information into the CRM, because each individual donor has their own cadence, right? We try to make the donor fit our cadence sometimes. Like you just said, you know the pattern. It's getting towards the end of the year. I'll start getting phone calls. I'll start doing this. But if you have a good system with good data in it, you can set up where you know your donor's birthday and you send them a birthday card, or you call them to say happy birthday. You can know the anniversary date in which they gave their first gift, and you can reach out then, as opposed to it being, again, this everybody in this time of the year is going to start reaching out to say thank you because they're building up to the end of the year ask. How are you setting that? How are you setting yourself apart and really diving into relationships and knowing your donor? I had a donor who, in our system, we cannot contact this donor during this month at any time because that is when they lost their child, right? Do you know your donors that well?
Yeah.
That's where I'm talking about, those relationships.
Well, and I was talking to another guy who he's got a business, and what they do is they will monitor social media so they know when, this is not donors, clients, but it's all the same, right?
It's all
money.
the same. It's all money.
Johnny just won the state championship or won the spelling bee or something because it was posted on social media. Send him a card, right?
Yep. Send him a card recognizing that.
I saw this. I saw your son's name in the paper, your daughter's name in the paper. I figured you want an extra copy, right? And they may not want an extra copy. I don't know.
But it's the thought.
Yeah. Let them throw it away. Not a big deal.
But it's the thought. It's the thought. I remember I'm a Rotarian and have been for a number of years. And I remember Mr. Adderhold, his very old gym. He's in his 90s plus and he's still doing very well. But I remember him sending me a card in the mail, and it was a clip, and he also included a clip out from the local newspaper that I was in, and he just sent the card, and it said something like, "I'm so proud to be in Rotary with you," and with the news clipping in there. And that so endeared me to him. Did I have the news clipping? Yes. It wasn't even about the news clipping. It was about somebody's out there watching my career path and what I'm accomplishing. And not only are they watching it, they're acknowledging it and took the time to send the card. So all these feelings come up, and we have to think about that when we are raising revenue, right? Because we're all raising revenue, whether you are not for profit or for profit, we're all raising revenue. And so how are you making your client feel like they're in a relationship with you?
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears. Let's talk about your business and how people can help you and how they can get a hold of you.
Well, they always say one call to action. So my call to action, as far as reaching out to me, is visit my website at www.supportingworldhope.com. And actually what I am really leaning into, as we go on this business journey, right, we pivot and we find out what really sparks our passion. And so what I'm really leaning into is my love for board of directors. I absolutely love boards of directors. I happen to serve on 5 boards, but board of directors are comprised of people who said yes. They said yes to time away from their family. They said yes to showing up to these meetings. They said yes to helping you raise funds. So I am really leaning into if you need help with your board of directors, and also this this leadership experience for different people around building relationships. So if you want help with those two things, I'm your girl. I also still do fundraising coaching, but my true, I do the fun. Frank, full disclosure for all the people that are out there in this nonprofit world. Look, people think they have a fundraising issue, but it's not a fundraising issue. It is a board of directors team issue.
Yeah.
And
I can see that.
yeah, that's what it is. But I have to, and that's where I excel at. But I know my clientele, I have to talk about fundraising. But if you want your board to fundraise, and if you want your employees to be passionate and invested in the organization and help you fundraise, then I'm your girl.
Yep. People can get a hold of you through
my
supporting
website.
Yep. All right. I'll get that in the show notes. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.